All right, welcome everybody. We're going to do welcome everyone to the North American SEM Collaborative final webinar of the year. We are starting off with an icebreaker poll. And so if you've attended our webinars before, we often use a polling platform called Mentimeter or Menti. And so if you go to menti.com, you can see on the screen share within On24, there's a link here at the top. And so if you could open another browser window, either on your computer or with your cell phone, smartphone, go to menti.com and then use the code 2516233. So again, menti.com 2516233. Please describe what is your favorite inspirational quote. We're going to do this poll for just a couple minutes here to let the stragglers catch up with us. So yeah, think of your favorite one. If it's been particularly relevant to you during times of COVID, great. If it's been a constant favorite for you for decades, also great. So think about that. I'm seeing some great quotes rolling in already. Be the change you wish to see in the world. When they go low, we go high. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in service. If there's enough blue in the sky to make a cat a pair of pants, it's going to be a sunny day. Very
courtesy
nice.
of my father.
I was going to say, Wendy, that sounds like yours.
Yep, that's an Ed Gibson original.
There are two kinds of people in this world: those who think there are two kinds of people, and those who know better. That's really great. Invictus. Do look at your feet. Can you run in those shoes? It's a good question to ask. There's a right way to do the wrong thing. Or, I'm sorry, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. This too shall pass. That's probably been a very valuable quote for this year. Yeah. Steve Prefontaine, famous Oregon runner. I'm gonna work so that it's a pure guts race at the end, and if it is, I'm the only one who can win it. It's great.
Yeah, that's all about being tenacious, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. A good skill set to have this year for sure.
Especially with as an SEM coach, we always say we walk the fine line between being annoying and being tenacious. I'm going to ping you just enough to get you to do stuff, but not enough to be annoying. Spoken
as a true, and I assume excellent former coach, SEM coach. I know I often tell my team when they're recruiting for SEM cohorts, I'm like, keep on calling them until they issue a restraining order. And
I don't know if that's good advice.
Yeah, should I say that in front of my clients? Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah. Now they know the secret, right? That's the secret right there.
This is great. Okay, these are outstanding. We'll leave the poll open. So if you do want to put in, you can leave your this browser window open, and we'll use this poll at other times. And so, yeah, please, don't close your browser window on your phone or on your thing. Just leave that open. But we'll go back here into On24 and back to our slides. And so again, welcome. Today we're gonna move quickly, cover a lot of stuff. We'll start with a welcome and quick look back, or we'll start with a quick look back about what happened in 2020. Talk about
Chad, your screen's not showing.
Oh, okay. Oh, here we go. Push to audience. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you all for your patience. Can you see the slide now, Wendy?
Still just your beautiful face.
Let's see here.
Wendy, if you click live view at the very bottom, it should pop up.
Okay.
So looks like it was user error.
Okay. This is great. I think it's one of my key lessons this year is like learning about 18 different webinar platforms, the last of which is on 24 this year. So it seems to be a very robust platform that ACH will use in many ways, and we'll use it probably for many of our webinars next year. We might use Zoom for some other ones, which we'll get into later. So we'll talk about webinars for next year. We'll also then get into our SEM Success Stories. We've got some great things to talk about. And then lastly, talk about how to get involved. So with that, I will pass it over to Wendy Gibson, who will talk about a quick look back.
Thanks. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, this year I think I'm really proud of what the North American SEM Collaborative has really put forth in a year of unprecedented, probably personal and work-related challenges. We were able to really hone in on some of the amazing things that we talked about doing over the course of the last 2 years in our business plan. One of those being the webinars. We kind of went out on a limb and did them, and so many of you guys showed up. It really showed how much need there was to have a community that meets regularly and learns from each other. I know Chad's going to talk a little bit more about the webinars, but we felt like those webinars were, a really great attendance, had a lot to learn, timely. We're going to continue those, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those in the future because of the success we saw. And then, we're almost done wrapping up our first funded research project, and some really interesting things are coming out of it that we're excited to share with you. Some really interesting questions that we kind of knew were out there, but now we kind of have research to bring them forth and really talk about them. So that's coming up pretty soon in the next year. And then a COVID-free SEM Summit. We did it. We did a virtual SEM Summit, and we were at least mildly engaging for the 150 of you that attended. And overall, just, a great success. We learned a lot of stuff. We started tackling DEI, which I think is really, really important, with that picture down there of the school district and supporting low-income students through internships. I think was one of the great lessons learned through that specific section. So yeah, just some really, really great stuff.
That's so great. And I think one thing as I look at this too, Wendy, is like thinking about how to say this. There's like it seems so far we've kind of figured out an approach that works well with other like regional collaboratives, like the Northwest and Northeast, and other nascent efforts in other regions, as well as areas that don't have that, and so providing value across the board. And that's been, of course, something we've focused on, but definitely this year we've learned a lot about how those things can fit together, and so yeah, that's been exciting.
Yeah, finding our groove.
Yes.
The year of finding our groove.
And this is the year of grooving something.
Yes.
Well, let's go then. Let's talk about the webinars. So we sent a poll out to a large group of folks, and so if you were on that mailing list, you would have received this email. Thank you for those of you who responded to that. Sorry, click the right thing. Okay, so to ask for webinar suggestions. But before we get into that, I want to kind of lay out the structure for how we envision webinars fitting in alongside the other kind of events that are happening this next year. So if you can see on this slide that we're sharing, you can see across the top, months in the calendar, and then you can see what look like little escalators. Basically, we think about our webinars as really a way to elevate our community on certain key topics. And so I was looking at an elevator icon. It didn't really do it. Versus this escalator, I think, really kind of shows that upward trajectory. So on given topics that we will focus on in these webinars, to really try to move the ball forward, to educate, to get a pulse from people in the community about your thoughts, about some of the cutting edge thinking. And so basically the idea here is we would do 7 webinars this next year, which is, I would say ambitious. We did 6 this year, which has been great. And we definitely, again, had some really amazing, I'd say, success with that, but a really outstanding involvement and participation from people, and some great reviews from people. So definitely taking those findings out, learning to apply into how we do this next year. inserted in that as well. So we'll have these webinars that have been kind of how we've done it with again, like doing some pre-surveying, looking at other, like doing a little bit of research to kind of prepare content for those webinars, and then making them interactive. And so doing polling and so on, providing the information back to you at the end of it. So that'll be the same. Well, we're also looking this year to be rolling out, we call them quarterly members roundtables. And so for the members of the organization, then we'll have a more of a closed group. And so that'll be having more breakouts and other kinds of discussion, more groups in quarterly sessions. And so you can see those again represented here on a quarterly cadence that will be working through some other topics, some things that may be kind of webinar related, but would warrant more conversation or more group discussion, group work, or more sharing of lots of perspectives and doing it more live in real time. So that's the vision for the roundtables. And then lastly, of course, you can see the SEM Summit. That is in July this next year. Again, it's for the last, basically every year it's been essentially attached to or adjacent to the ACEEE Industrial or Building Summer Studies. And this next year, the Industrial Summer Study is in Detroit in July. And so same thing, it'll be that. So that's why it's there in July. And in subsequent years, it may shift. Usually, like, for example, the Building Summer Studies are typically in August. Anything else, Wendy, if you want, is there anything else you'd like to add on this structure?
No, I think the only thing I'd add to 2021 with the SEM Summit is we're cautiously optimistic that we will be in person, but we do have and are preparing for a potential virtual SEM Summit too. So we're prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best.
That's great. Yeah, maybe ideally vaccines will be out and we'll be in a strong place. But if they're not, we still, again, our priority number one in our SEM Summits is to make sure you don't catch COVID while you're there. So if it means doing it virtually, that's what we'll do. So we asked for webinar topics to get input from you, and you all were, the people that responded to this survey were excellent. The next number of slides I have just summarize some of these things. These are eye charts. And basically what we'll be doing is asking you, I'll highlight some things in here and then ask you in a poll some of your kind of initial thoughts about timing of these things. But definitely a lot of this content we would actually put into the pre-surveys. And so if we did a webinar on program design, for example, you can see here some notes, some suggestions from program design. Then the pre-survey would kind of get into these things and explore some of the different aspects of these. So, but anyway, so I will highlight some key things here just in the slides and then getting moved through about 5 slides of great detailed information. So there are a number of suggestions here, as you can see, on program design. I guess a few things to call out, alternatives to kind of the traditional cohort model, thinking about what to do after a customer's been in a program for 1 or 2 years. Like how do you extend the value or keep them involved? What could those kind of program designs, what do they look like? What could they look like? Thinking about how SEM fits as a market transformation offering, which is, I guess I'd say different, or could be different than a resource acquisition offering. And so thinking that through what that kind of roadmap could look like. SEM Light, so how do you lighten things up? Definitely sharing other kind of program design ideas from the community, what's worked really well. Yeah, and then there's some other great stuff here as well. Again, we will put all this to you in great detail and some surveys coming up over the next course of the year. The SEM as a platform is what I call these series of types of topics. A lot of thoughts about GHG, carbon, like tying SEM to carbon, and how do you go about that, and what does that look like? And so that's very exciting. But also in here as well, we had some things about NEBs, non-energy benefits, thinking about capacity-focused TSM, like focusing on managing peak, as well as electrification. So like low carbon electrification or other purposes to electrify things. And so again, how do those strategies fit together? Of course, M&V always is an interesting one. I pulled out some specific, most of the M&V things were related to COVID. We did have one here about kind of SEM program influence versus claim savings. And so that's definitely a lot about kind of, in my mind, like measurement or / evaluation types of strategies. And so definitely important, but there's a lot to explore in COVID related. We definitely, again, between the webinar we did this last spring about COVID, and we had an M&B webinar following that. Those definitely brought a lot of things to light, but then there's a lot of other things that as we figure out, as we'll be figuring out in the coming years, perhaps the impacts of COVID. So overall trends, talking about that, included in that would be DEI, going deeper on DEI, but also other kind of trends to be aware of. So a little more eye charty here. Some questions or ideas about ISO 50001 and 50001 Ready. Maybe sharing case studies about these. There are things like non-M&B related topics about COVID and how to think about how to think about COVID. Like there have been some permanent changes at different at like building sites, at customer sites, for example. Think about sectors, and so going specific, some ideas people had here about commercial property managers, municipalities, K-12 schools. And then the last big kind of categories, I'd say kind of tools and approaches. People want to get specific about what works, what doesn't work. For example, we had like virtual, doing things virtually, doing things remote, or like other kind of lessons learned and best practices. Anything else here I'd kind of call out? Yeah, like SEM across boundaries. Lots of great stuff in here. So before we get to SEM Success Stories, we're going to go back to do a screen share again to do another poll question. So let me see if I do this right. So the question you have in one word: which webinar should we do first? So again, 25. So go to menti.com, menti.com. Use the code 251623233. If you kept your browser window open, like I told you, then it should be really easy to do. So you just go to that, and it should have refreshed. And all you got to do is type in one word. And so we just covered a lot of topics, but just curious as we sequence things out in what we're going to cover this next year. Definitely want to be responsive. And so, all right, seeing some responses coming in. Wow, dead tie for GHG and COVID. SEM Lite, that's great. Does have a space between SEM Lite, but we'll call that one word. Oh, SEM Dash Lite, definitely, okay, that's great. Light, nice. DSM, GHG, analytics. Think about what's most urgent to you. Or what do you see as most urgent to your programs, to your needs? Seeing 50,001, seeing case studies, I see. That's great. Impact.
GHG holding strong.
Yeah, man, it's wonderful. Implementation, yep. Municipalities coming in. Small business resilience. Again, a little extension of one word, but we'll let it count. We'll let it slide.
I see municipalities on there. There's a lot of interest from municipalities about this type of approach, either participating in, delivering for their community. So there's definitely some interest in that area from them as well, which is exciting to see.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point, Wendy. There's so much happening at that level, and where there can be, engaging with the municipalities and partnering with the municipalities. Yeah, that's so great. Wonderful. We'll keep the poll open, and then in the spirit of time, we will. So if you have other ideas, please drop in the poll. The poll will stay open until we go to the next one. So but I will end the screen share and go back to our slides. Go to the SEM Success Stories. All right. We asked for success stories from 2020. We had 49, by my count, 49 success stories submitted. It was outstanding. To honor the people here that did submit them, I'm going to read your names aloud. So 5001 Strategies, Advanced Energy, AESC, BC Hydro, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab or Berkeley Lab, Bonneville Power Administration, Cascade Energy, Clear Result, ComEd, Energy Trust of Oregon, Franklin Energy, Great Work Energy, the Judicial Council of California, National Grid, Prism Engineering, PG&E, Puget Sound Energy, PSC, SEG, Stillwater Energy, and VEIC. Thank you all for nominating, sending in some success stories. That was very great. We then took that. You responded. I took the information back and anonymized things where it was appropriate, pulled out any identifying information, but then basically sent that to our leadership team. Wendy, Debbie, Greg, and Walt took time to go through them all and selected their favorites. And so what we're to do now is actually have the four of them provide some highlights about what they found. I would say here you can see the kind of the format. So we get some detailed information here. Again, these are sort of eye charts, and so I'm going to ask then these leadership team members going to provide some highlights and what they thought was interesting. So we'll start with Debbie Driscoll from NIA. Debbie, can you hear us? Oh, and you're slightly muted, or you are muted maybe. I would say slightly muted. You can see your mouth moving.
There we go. We hear you. We hear you.
Okay, you can hear my big sigh.
We got that.
All right,
Perfect.
awesome. Well, thanks. It was so as I looked through the many entries, I prioritized successes that could have the biggest systemic impact on SEM. So not just like an individual thing, because there were lots of really great stories of things happening across both countries, but really what can change the way we're doing SEM and really increase the impact of SEM. Even with this filter, it was really challenging to select only 5. I had maybe 10 that I had to somehow narrow down from. The first one here, I think, is a perfect example, though. Energy Trust of Oregon published an evaluation study that allowed them to update their measure life to 7 years, which was, I think I'm going to get in trouble with Katie, but I think it was at 2 before. Somebody can correct me. Wendy can probably correct me. But changing it to 7 is just huge and changes the whole way the program can be calculated and what they can be offering and how they can be claiming savings from it. And not only does the evaluation help Energy Trust do this, but it's really clear and convincing documentation so that other utilities can follow their lead in making this change, which is a game changer. So talk about systemic change. The next one, finding ways to reduce the cost of implementing Superior Energy Performance 50001 and ISO 50001 is something that could certainly mean the difference between putting SEM in place or not for a company. So that's a great one. And then I love the story that Greg shared here and focusing on the last half of the story here, how the managers toured each other's plants using virtual whiteboards and pictures in Google Maps and helped each other diagnose the savings and how much they were able to accomplish through that. And I could just imagine like it being just such an engaging time and how they were all able to help each other and how much more connected those facilities are. Even in this virtual time, it sounds like they're able to really continue to be a support for each other. So I thought that was super exciting. And then I couldn't see who submitted these, so I didn't realize that multiples had to do with VEIC and Energy Trust. But so apologies there. But I did love this example that Katie submitted, because again, I think it's something that tons of people could benefit from, like the popularity of leaf blowers to replace compressed air. That just seems like it is a game changer, and maybe we should get the word out about this. And finally, the submission from Bryn Oakley from VEIC, the advanced control setbacks, and really getting on it, using the connection of SEM to affect a broad range of buildings who could change those setbacks, and helping to prove out like this can make a big difference, folks. So hopefully hopefully VEIC can get that information out even further. Thanks.
Debbie,
great
so
submissions.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for your insights. Yeah, I just love all 5 of these as well. I think that, you know, leaf blowers one is just such a refreshing one, because people often chase like the silver bullet, this big thing we need to do, and it's like sometimes the answers are very kind of old school or rudimentary, and they're right in front of you. You just need to kind of like rethink the problem. And so again, it's very fresh. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you, Debbie. Let's go to our next person, Greg Baker.
All
Greg,
right.
Can you hear me? Perfect.
Can you hear me, Chad? Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. This was a fun opportunity to review these quotations and success stories anonymous, because as you'll see, I ended up picking someone from VEIC, which I did not realize I was doing. But my first one, I will have a call out to Jonathan Nickerson. I do know him at National Grid. And I guess my mindset when I first read this one was I was thinking about recruitment and other venues, and it just talks about, you know, the pitch to companies is not all the same. And when we all know in the SEM community, probably the most difficult element of the SEM journey is actually getting someone on board. Once they're on board, we can take it from there. But getting someone to buy on in the early, before they actually know the value or see the value, is difficult. So this one really just talks to, you know, framing it in a different version. You know, it's not just about cost savings. It's actually fulfilling the university's 10-year climate action goals. And this relates to other experiences I have working in DC with the BEPS, the BEPS regulations that are going through. You know, companies need assistance in many more ways than just cost savings. Cost savings obviously is usually king, but sometimes you have to make that right value proposition. The second one is, you know, Debbie just spoke about it. Bryn Oakley from VEIC, the Efficiency Vermont program, really worked with college and universities to see how low you can go. And they realized, hey, we can go lower than we thought. And, you know, those aha moments when facility managers realize, wow, this was not that difficult to do, and I think we can do even more, is really impactful. And, you know, COVID allowed this to happen. You know, we don't like to say benefits of COVID, but this could be one of them. The third one, you know, I just thought this was a great quote, because I've heard this before from other facility owners that, you know, just built a new facility and they're like, hey, you can't help me with these treasure hunts. We thought that because our new facility built with energy efficiency in mind, we didn't know how much we'd save. We'd save a lot more than we thought we would. Katie, this was a great one. I really think companies just don't understand the value of asking the question why throughout our treasure hunts, and changing the old mindset of why things operate the way they do. The third one, this one was from Sam Walker at Stillwater. I'm just going to read it. I think the coolest one is to take advantage of the virtual revolution, where utilities participated in the virtual awareness events and the ability to provide multiple guests. And we've seen this before. you can get more. We saw it at the SEM Summit. The ability to get customers at the summit was unique because we were remote. Typically, people aren't going to fly down the Pacific Grove for that building summer study. So this virtual platform enabled greater access to utility personnel and information, while event recordings increased accessibility. Once again, another, I'll put in air quotes, benefit of the COVID time. It forced us to do things virtually. And this last one, submitted by Jenrick Goffman at PG&E, was just a good quote. We're not expecting to find so many opportunities to drastically reduce power usage simply by changing our collective way of thinking. You know, that's just a great quote. The power of change. So, thank you for allowing me to speak about my top 5. Jed, thanks.
That's great. Thanks, Greg. That was outstanding. And again, yeah, for our process, I know I mentioned before, but yeah, you see here, I did add the names and affiliations, organizational affiliations of the folks. That wasn't what was included to these 4 folks that did select their top ones. I do love here a few. There's a bunch to love in this list here. I think calling out Katie's as well, like how many times that for those of you who do implement SEM, you've probably heard this, and they say, "Oh, I got a new facility, so then I'm good. I'm good for at least a while." And those of us that know, those people that say they've got no opportunities are the ones that have tons. Buildings or facilities are dynamic, and as organizations are as well. And so, with that change, there comes opportunity. And so, I wouldn't say not taking no for an answer, but kind of exposing them to that mindset. And how to approach that. So that's really powerful. So thanks, Greg. And excellent nominations, or excellent success stories, folks. Let's go to the next list. Wendy chose some long ones. So Wendy, how about Wendy gives an energy trusted word?
Yeah, for me, I was really looking at things that maybe we could share or do, like across the platforms. And so one of the things that I was looking at is like aha moments, really specific examples of approaches and like ways in which COVID has changed to move us forward. So that's kind of where my mind was. And I was very much like Debbie. I highlighted all the ones I liked, and then I very followed directions and only picked 5. But it was hard. So the first one there just really talks about a city moving from just doing kind of strategic, energy management within the silo of like a facilities to a citywide strategic energy management plan. And I think that one really spoke to me because I understand how hard it is to get cities out of silos. And a lot of times we work with only specific departments within cities. And I think especially bigger cities run the risk of not seeing the full benefits of SEM. So really elevating SEM up to that higher level was a pretty ingenious way of moving that through the process into kind of a citywide approach, which is really, really important. The second one talks about hospital systems. And I thought it was so amazing that a hospital was able to saw the benefits of SEM to the point where they actually attended all of the workshops. And I was just like, that really speaks to what SEM provides for hospitals, right? For the people that are on the front lines of this pandemic. It's saving them money right now. It's saving them having to lay people off. And I think that that's really important. The next one talks about an executive sponsor who kind of had an aha moment themselves. And why I really called this one out is because it doesn't talk about just him getting on board. It talks about him taking SEM to shareholders. And in my mind, that was something I had never heard before, is not just getting your executive sponsor to get on board, getting your executive sponsor from the top down approach, but getting your executive sponsor to elevate it up to the shareholders. Some of us work with private companies, and I wonder how many of us have actually convinced an executive sponsor to go to shareholders and actually talk about the good energy work they're doing, and how by investing in energy efficiency, they're actually getting the shareholders more money. And so for me, that was a kind of a nugget we could take away as a way to increase SEM. And then just that conversation that Greg already mentioned about the virtual revolution, right? And how we're showing that we can do this virtually and sometimes with better results than we do in person. although I have to say I do love an in-person workshop. But I agree that more people can participate. We're breaking down some of those barriers, perhaps, that we would normally have for people that can't afford to attend in-person events. And I think that's really important, or aren't located in cities that would normally attend those events. And then the wastewater cohort I thought was really interesting. And for me, there were a couple really unique things in the wastewater cohort example that they provided. And that had to do with the community approach that they took virtually. So having peer-to-peer virtual treasure hunts, which I know have been done somewhat in the past, but I think it's a great mechanism that a lot of people do not use, is getting one organization to walk through another organization's site, not just your energy expert, right, or your engineer from your SEM program, but then also the tools they brought virtually, which is Google Maps, pictures, virtual whiteboards. I think making that really interactive was perhaps something we can all take away to better our SEM program. I was impressed with a lot of what was shared, honestly, and it really gives me hope and love for the future.
Hope and love. That should have been our theme for this webinar. Yeah, and it's something I think, again, you said here that really spoke to me is like, and again, Greg kind of teed it up, and then you took the ball farther. I think is like that. Yeah, while no one would wish that we would have preferred that we have had COVID in our around the world, it has forced some things that we may see some long-term benefits out of, and made, for example, doing things virtually like we do, a commonplace, and which can provide some other kinds of benefits, perhaps, for example, on DEI, where we can work with smaller and smaller organizations, or engage other kinds of groups. And so that's really exciting. Thank you so much, Wendy. And then our last person who will be presenting his top 5 will be Walt Tennyson from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Hello, Walt. Click the audio check in here. There you are. Great.
Well, first, let me say that we all voted on these blind, and we really didn't know who else was who voted for what. So there was a good degree of serendipitousness, I guess, or we weren't collaborating on these. So you do see a couple here that got picked more than once. I just wanted to put that out there. But for me, this top one really represents a lot of what I think SEM programs are about, and that's changing organizational culture. And so I'm always pleased when I see people talking about the role of SEM and building that energy efficiency culture. And this kind of summed it up to me, because I think without that, that's why you see that your energy saving efforts are disjointed. It's not part of your organizational culture. And I thought this was a great one-liner about that kind of concept. The second one, of course, I'm Walt Tennyson from the EPA. I work at Energy Star, and Energy Star is actually about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so for us, energy efficiency is a really important strategy in addressing climate and decarbonization. And I actually feel like SEM is going to be a really important strategy in helping to advance this. And it's an area where I think all of us will be able to play a critical role in making a difference on our planet. And so seeing this about a greenhouse gas SEM participation was really encouraging for me to see, other people are thinking this way too, proving it's possible to make significant changes, and that this is something I think that more of our programs should begin looking at and thinking about how to work in some of the decarbonization aspects in terms of energy management. Because in my mind, it really is a lot of where the future, maybe not necessarily just utility programs, but just where companies will be needing to go in the future in terms of managing energy strategically. The other one, the hospital ones, my wife is a doctor, so it's been a pretty frontline experience for me during COVID. I have a lot of family members who are physicians. My cousin in Colorado Springs, ER doctor, did get COVID. So I know how hard it's been for healthcare people, and to see that folks that are supporting doctors in terms of their running these facilities that continued to participate and did not miss their sessions as part of their SEM program, to me was really impressive because those folks were busy. They had a lot going on. But it also says that, SEM, particularly the cohort design, plays a really important role in providing a support structure for other folks who are involved in energy management. There's a lot of people who are working in this field that don't know who else to talk to in their community. And by providing the forum where you bring people together that have a similar, job mission around saving energy is really important. And I think I saw on Chad in one of your webinars talking about alumni. I think that's a really important direction for SEM programs, something that Energy Star has been supporting and we want to be involved in. But, this type of thing here with these people getting together because they need, they want to learn, but I think they also need to talk to each other. Is really important. And so that was a quote that resonated with me. This one too, Chad, you mentioned this, we got a new facility, right? Didn't think there was much we could save. And then we found out we could save a lot more. I mean, I think all of us know, we've heard this before. The other classic one is we've done everything, right? That's the other one, what more can we do? And I think most of us who've been in the SEM field know, like, there's always something you can do. You can always get better. Just because you've got the fastest, nicest carbon fiber road bike doesn't mean you can't get faster, right? So, it's about performance. It's about continuous improvement. And this, these kinds of quotes, they sort of sum up again why SEM is an important model, because it isn't one and done. It's about continuous improvement. And even if you got a new facility, doesn't mean that it isn't commissioned right and there aren't opportunities. And then lastly, for myself, I do work with a lot of folks at the corporate level. One of the things we encourage them to do is to have competitions within their own organizations on energy, for energy reductions or even participating in some of our recognition programs. And so it's nice to see that there are the SEM programs are supporting, these facilities in terms of their own corporate organizational programs in terms of meeting those challenges, right? So it's kind of like you got your private coach with your SEM coach to help you win that competition. So that's the kind of connection that's good to see, the bottom up at one level and then the top down from the corporate in terms of encouraging this unification in the right direction on energy management. So I like that quote a lot too. So thanks, Chad. That's it for me.
Well, that was wonderful. On that last point, again, them winning the energy challenge and like winning because they were been, I wouldn't say because, but probably there's a correlation between them doing SEM in that program and then they won the challenge. And I assume then the other sites in that company were very interested. The plants were like going, what do we need to do to step up our game? So that's really interesting.
How'd you get that edge?
Yeah, exactly. The other one too, and again, it's come up before this, the hospital hospital system didn't miss a single workshop. I've used this analogy for myself to describe in some other workshops where I try to run sometimes relatively consistently, but I always try to run on the nastiest day of the year, usually in January or so, February, because I know that if I run that day, then I will more likely maintain my running through the rest of the year. Versus if I don't run that day, it's more easy for me to make excuses. And so this example here just shows that commitment. They say, this is important, this is strategically important, we're going to make it through COVID. And so we can't give up on this investment in ourselves. We got to keep at it. So it's a great call, Walt. Well, thank you, the four of you, for providing your nominations. Again, we had 49 success stories submitted. So I wrote down here the people that did get more than 2 or more selected, the top nominated favorite SEM success stories. Katie, I would say 1, if you will, the most. She had three times she was nominated, but then one of the times, I'm sorry, that her success story was chosen. And then, but I also say in one of the success stories, there's actually Todd Amundsen's success story, which was basically calling out Katie and Erica Koselik from Energy Trust for a presentation they did. So I'm going to count that as 4 success stories for Katie. Pat Bradley with 3 success stories, and then Genrick Goffin from PG&E, Greg Baker and Brent Oakley from VEIC, and Sam Walker from Stillwater Energy, each having 2. So well done. It was a lot of fun. We hope to get many more success stories this next year. For those of you who love word clouds, tag clouds, this is a quick word cloud of all of the nomination and of all the success stories all thrown into a word cloud. I will say it's kind of hard to see. If you look at SEM, SAVE, energy, look at the Y in energy. Just up from that, there's the word year. To the left of that, it's hard to see, but the word COVID is there. It's not that big, and which is maybe a good thing. And definitely, I would hope that COVID will not appear in next year's word cloud. But let's go to the next poll really quick. Screen share. So you can go back to your web browser that has menti.com. And if you have closed that for some reason, please go to menti.com. Use a code 2516 23 and 3. I didn't put every nominated the top finalist. I just kind of used my own discretion and chose some. I think I did no more than one per organization. I think it's one of my main filters. So please choose what your favorite was. The ICE 2001 savings one, the leaf blowers one. That was from Paul Schein. Leaf blowers from Katie Harper. The SEM for climate action from Jonathan at National Grid. The active SEM hospital from Pat Bradley. Using COVID to raise awareness from Brent Oakleaf over at VEIC. The changed collective thinking in the culture from Genrich Goffman at PG&E. Greenhouses and SEM, and that surprise that came out there. The company energy reduction challenge and how that SEM organization fared compared to its peers. And then lastly, the study, the 7-year EUL that Todd Amundsen nominated, the presentation done by Katie and Erica. So we're seeing some responses coming in. This is looking pretty good. I'm seeing, Wendy, what do you see here? I mean, obviously we see things, but any observations, any surprises?
You know, I think for me, one of the things that surprised me was the consistency with what really stood out with us and where we're going, and also the theme across all of the success stories, right? Like around making the shift and successfully doing it, around those aha moments found throughout the year, and around even taking and sharing some of the stories that we heard at the SEM Summit, like the 7-year measure life, you know, or at the Northwest SEM Collaborative, and actually like sharing that information out. So great, so great. Well, this is wonderful. I'm going to keep this open. We will include these, you know, at the end of each of our webinars. We send out the deck, and we add into the deck. We add in the results of these polls, and so you can have that for your own viewing pleasure. And so, in respect of your time, we're going to keep it moving and talk about how to get involved. So I'm going to stop my screen share here and go back to the slides. And Wendy's going to talk about how to get involved. Yes. All right. So one of the things that as most of you guys know is we have been working feverishly to kind of find our rhythm, which I think we did this past year. One of the things that we came to you guys at the SEM Summit was, and before that, was this idea that we were expanding and taking a look at our leadership team for multiple reasons, not the least of which is that most of us have been at this for at least 3, some of us 4 years now. And also in that look, we also realized that we weren't a very diverse leadership team. And that was one of our missions through our charter, was to be more diverse from geography, race, types of organizations. We were very uniform, and we didn't want to be. And so we put out the leadership team notice to see if other people wanted to join. And I'm really pleased to say that we had, Greg was at 30 some odd applications, which was phenomenal. We weren't expecting that many. Really excited to see that many people. So it was a really hard decision.
Yeah.
Yep. But so one of the things we wanted to announce was just, and show you guys, is how we are expanding. So before we were a little bit more located in the Northwest area. Now you can see we are spread throughout North America, both in Canada representing with one, And then both coasts really well represented now, and we at least have one representative in California and one representative in the Midwest. So I think geographically, we really expanded our intent there. We also really expanded kind of who the people are. So we have implementers now, government agencies, utilities, program managers or program administrators, and then RIOs as well. And also we have a more diverse leadership team as well. So the new members, in fact, I would say the caliber of leaders was so high that we saw that we actually voted unanimously to expand our leadership team from 9 to 10 people because of the caliber, and also I think the level of work we've realized that this takes. And so we'd really like to welcome Shelly Jensen from Idaho Power, Derek Okada from Southern Cal Edison, Giselle, I'm going to butcher this, Giselle
Procaccianti, okay. I think.
Okay. From NEEP, and then Kate Dooley with NYSERDA. They are going to be the new leadership team members. We have a kickoff scheduled in January, so super excited about that.
Outstanding.
So we've kind of been going back to this, what we aim to do as the North American SEM Collaborative. And we keep going back to our strategic priorities through our mission and vision, which is driven by our charter, which is to understand strategic priorities and the need of SEM stakeholders. These webinars keep us connected to the community. The questions that we ask through the Mentimeters keep us connected to the community. The SEM Summit, trying to look and suss out funded research projects we can do, keep us connected there and understand what your priorities are. We also really want to be a mechanism for communicating the interests and perspectives of the SEM community in North America. Our connection with and support from ACEEE really allows us to do that. They have a context at the federal level, at the North American level, around what is happening, around where SEM is seeing large national trends, municipalities being one of those that was identified. So us connecting in that way allows us to kind of keep our pulse on what's happening at the larger North American level. And then really expanding what we're doing with the infrastructure. We've got some great stuff on tap for next year, not the least of which is creating an SEM database, which is going to be funded, which is really exciting. So really moving forward with a lot of the things that we've promised you guys that we're going to do. And we need your help. That's what this is about, is getting involved and getting your help. So we want you guys to help us. We've identified a couple ways to do this. We want you guys to help us with the future of the collaborative. And we've been talking about this, I think, off and on for about 1.5 years now. We're really getting ready to launch it. I think the first time we ever mentioned membership was actually about 1 year ago at our first webinar that we hosted after the SEM Summit in 2019. And we've identified several ways that you can help support us. We had seed funding from some large donors. And it's time to move past that seed funding and find a stable source of income that we can use to do the summit, do the webinars, get support from ACEEE. The leadership team is voluntary, but some of that other stuff is not. So becoming a member, we are creating a membership structure. The SEM Summit will always be available to anyone. Obviously, it is a pay form of structure, and that's to help pay for the SEM Summit, but you can always participate through the SEM Summit as an individual or organization. The webinars also will be available to you, but there are some added benefits that we've identified as a member. So starting in 2021, we're going to be creating kind of 3 or 4 different opportunities organizations, or 2 or 3 different opportunities that organizations have. And so the first one that we just wanted to identify is becoming a member. And these are identified as an organizational level. And I'm not going to go over all of these benefits that you can get, but really the crux of it is that there's different levels of memberships or ways to sponsor the North American SEM Collaborative, and depending on how much you feel your organization can give, there's increased benefits for it. We will be kind of reaching out to you guys to talk about this, but just know that this is coming, this membership benefit structure. And then the other way is to sponsor relevant research. So we've been benefited from some of the support from some of our larger donors, the Department of Energy being one of them, Natural Resource Canada being another one that's going to be supporting us, and the EPA. So there's some large federal support. ACEEE provided some initial funding as well. And so the research that's coming out of the great research that's coming out this next year is an example of some of that funded research. The SEM database is going to be funded as well. And so beyond membership, if for some reason membership doesn't work for you, one of the ways you could get involved as an organization is to help fund some of the research that you're interested in and that the community is interested in. So that's going to be another avenue to help support the North American SEM Collaborative and get some of those larger questions answered, and maybe blow the doors off some of those questions and open up a whole bunch of other questions that we can work towards. So that's going to be another avenue. And then the third thing, which we've been doing for years now, is just, we need support to actually host and deliver the SEM Summit. While, again, the leadership team time is all voluntary, the space for SEM to host the summit is not, the platform we may use is not, the food and drinks is not, but the wit and humor is always free. So we will be developing a way to sponsor the SEM Summit on an organizational level like we always have. And then also, of course, there'll be a nominal fee to attend moving forward as well to help pay for the SEM Summit. So we just wanted to give everybody a heads up that this is just the next evolution in the North American SEM Collaborative, and it really is to just keep us functioning at this high level.
That's great. I will add, the wit and humor is free because we don't want you to ask for your money back. Outstanding. Well, we're so excited, and in this, our organization is a reflection of you, a reflection of the community of what you need and look for. And so this has been a very fun year and a very fun webinar to put together as we kind of again look back and look forward. And so want to thank you all for your time. Thank you for all the work you put into doing SEM, for all the fun things you do in your programs, a lot of the hard problems that you work through every day, that you work to solve. I think it's fair to say, speaking on behalf, Wendy or Greg or the other members of our leadership team, we're definitely honored, lucky, fortunate to be in this business, and very fortunate to work with all of you. We have our thank you note. I do want to call out here, this is a little hard to see maybe on the left side. This is the outgoing or the leadership team as it stood. And so I do want to call out the three individuals that all will be cycling off here. So Brian Albert from Nexent, let's see, Martin Lott from Cascade, and Debbie Driscoll from NIA. All three put in, all contributed in amazing ways, and were outstanding professionals. Again, it was an honor to work alongside the three of you, and definitely we're excited to work with the rest of you moving forward. And so we have a final poll. And so I'm going to do my screen share one last time. Okay, here. It's a fun one. What is one word that describes your holiday plans? Wendy, Greg, if you guys have some thoughts. Skiing, lovely.
I said mine is inside.
Okay.
And small, I believe.
Nice. This is a risky one, this question. So this is good so far. Yeah.
Someone's going skiing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Feasting. Lovely.
Sleep. Can we just sleep now until 2021? Actually, I have a friend who, they sent me a meme that said something like, we should all tiptoe into 2021 without touching anything, making no promises. Everybody just slow. I think everybody came into 2021 or 2020 being like, this is going to be my year. But we don't want to jinx it. Everybody tiptoe into 2021 and don't touch anything.
Right. Don't make any eye contact on your way out, guys.
That's right. Nobody jinx it.
Yeah.
And I'll just say to the community, that type of wit and humor comes with the package. So it's
That's okay.
beautiful. Thank you.
If you don't want that wit and humor, this is great. This is great. 38 responses. Lovely. Well, with that, thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your year. Enjoy your holiday season. Stay safe. And we'll see you in 2021.
Thanks,
Be
everyone.
well, everyone. Be well.
Bye.